Welcome back everyone, and in this second video lesson about forces, we're going to look at resultant force. So what is resultant force? If there are several forces acting on each other or acting on an object, we can add all the forces together and then we get the resultant force, or also known as the net force. So the resultant force has the same effect as each of the added force combined. So if you have a force that is going up and going to the right, and if you compare it with a resultant force that goes in the northeast direction, these two situations, situation A and situation B, will have the same effect, will have the same result. So in situation A, the box will move to the northeast, and in situation B, the box also moves to the northeast. In other words, if you take the two forces and then replace it with its resultant force, it will still have the same effect. If the forces acting on an object is unbalanced, there will be a resultant force or a net force. So unbalanced meaning that the forces are not equal and opposite each other. So here you have a force that goes up and to the right. So if you combine these two forces together, they will have a net force or resultant force of going to the northeast. So if the forces acting on an object is balanced, the resultant force or net force is zero. So balance meaning they cancel out each other or they balance out each other. So here you have a force that's going up and a force that's going down. These two are equal. They cancel out each other. They are equally strong. So if you add or combine the two together, it is as if there's no net force acting on the object. There's no resultant force. Let's try exercise 1 and try to determine the resultant force of each of these forces. And then we can write down whether the forces are balanced or unbalanced. So in this first example, you have 9 Newton to the left, 4 Newton and 5 Newton to the right. So this 4 and 5 Newton, since they are in the same direction, so they add together to become 9 Newton in total. And then you see there's 9 Newton to the left and 9 Newton to the right in total. And these two will cancel out each other. So 9 Newton minus 9 Newton. So the resultant force for A is actually 0. And then are the three forces here balanced or unbalanced? The three forces here are balanced because when you add them all together or combine them all together, there's no resultant force. The resultant force is 0. Let's do B. There's 7 Newton to the left. Someone is pushing to the left with 7 Newton. And then there's 2% pushing to the right with 3 Newton and 6 Newton. These two forces will add up together because they are in the same direction. So they can be combined together. 3 plus 6 equal to 9. So there's a total of 9 Newton to the right and 7 Newton to the left. So if you think about these two forces together, which force will win? Okay, what's the result between these two forces? Of course, the force to the right will win because it's stronger with a net force of 2 Newton. Okay, so it's 9 minus 7. So 2 Newton to the right. So overall, the result or the resultant force will be 2 Newton to the right. And are the forces balanced or unbalanced? The forces here are unbalanced. Why? Because there is a resultant force caused from all these forces combined together. Let's do C. Now you have 6 Newton and another 6 Newton force that is pushing to the right. These two will combine and they are a total of 12 Newtons to the right. And then 7 Newton and 5 Newton to the left. So these two, you have a total of 12 Newton also, but going to the left. Now you have a total of 12 Newton pushing to the left, 12 Newton pushing to the right. So if you consider these two forces, what is the net effect? What is the net force or resultant? What is the resultant force? The resultant force is, because they're equal, they cancel out each other. So there's no resultant force, 0 Newton. And so the forces here are balanced. Let's look at D, 6 Newton and 7 Newton to the right. So total of 11 Newton to the right, 9 Newton and 5 Newton to the left. So a total of 14 Newton to the left. So 14 and 11, because they are opposite of each other, so you just minus them. 14 minus 11, they are against each other, so they have to be minus. So the resultant force is 3 Newton. And which force is stronger? The strongest force is the 14 Newton to the left. So the resultant force will also be to the left. Are these forces balanced or unbalanced? These forces are unbalanced because there is a resultant force. And that's the end of this video lesson. So today we looked at resultant force. So resultant force, or otherwise known as net force, is a combination of all the different forces acting on an object. Now to put it simply, if you have the forces acting in the same direction, you can add them together, okay, to calculate the resultant force. But if you have two forces that are in opposite direction with each other, you just minus them or deduct them from each other to find the net force. In part 3, we're going to look at balanced forces and also the first Newton's law.